Alright, we're ready to start on our next part of the notes. This is for Unit 3, Ecology II. This is the first of the notes. And what we're doing here, set up your page, take a minute, pause this if you need to, and we're going to do B12B. And B12B says that you're going to compare variations and adaptations of organisms in different ecosystems. So compare variations, there's your first word you need to know, variations and adaptations of organisms, and I'm going to abbreviate organisms as orgs, in different ecosystems, in different different ecosystems. Alright, so the first word is a word that you know already, and that is that word ecosystems. You should remember that from the last unit and probably from some of your earlier science classes. An ecosystem is a community plus the non-living environment. So community, remember that a community is a group of populations living in an area. So it's a community plus the non-living environment. Now, when I say non-living, another word for that you'll see a lot is abiotic. If you have a or an on the front of a word, it means not. Or in this case, if we had just biotic, biotic would mean it's got life in it. Abiotic means it's non-living. It's not that it's dead, it's just that it's not alive. Within this, we can talk about unique types of ecosystems called biomes. So a biome is an ecosystem. It's just one of the larger ecosystems on the planet. So it's one of Earth's major ecosystems. Now, it's typically classified by the dominant vegetation and the climate. So dominant vegetation means the most common of the plants that are there. And climate, I think you guys know what that is. Dominant vegetation and climate. So examples of something would be maybe something like a grassland biome. We live in one right here. A lot of times it's even referred to in our particular area as the high plains area, because not only are we a grassland, but our elevation is above 3,000 feet. Typically our elevation around here is close to 3,600 feet, so we're in a grassland and it's at a high elevation. Another example of one would be over in central Oklahoma. There's a blackjack, that's a type of oak tree, / post oak biome. And that covers probably from the north border of Oklahoma down in through Dallas and over a little bit into Arkansas, Missouri. So it's this huge, huge biome that's there. The next word I want to talk about that was in our T here was that word variation. And when we say variations or variation, if I can spell, variations, that just means differences. So if we talk about the variations in humans, we would talk about hair color, eye color, skin color, height, weight, whether or not you have freckles. Those are types of variations that occur. So these are variations. Now I'm going to pick a different color, and if you haven't started using different colors when you take notes, it's a good idea to invest in some colored pencils or markers, because it's easier to study when you have things in different colors. The rest of the stuff we're going to talk about here would be dealing with adaptations. So adaptations, and I'm going to zoom this in just a little bit, see if I can do that. Maybe not. Okay, I have no idea what happened there, but apparently we'll just leave it like this. There we go. Okay, so adaptations are traits or characteristics that increase several things. And so I'm going to put an arrow up going right here, and that means increase, and I'm going to get tired of writing that out, so I'm just going to put an arrow, so that way you remember, you write it once and you'll remember. So it increases an organism's fitness. And I'm going to capitalize that word. That was in our last unit, fitness, but I know a lot of people had issues with this. Fitness is not, we're not talking about going to the gym. Fitness means how well it uses its resources. So a primo example would be talking about the owl bolus. You guys, if you weren't here to dissect the owl bolus in class, then you probably did it in another class. But the owl bolus is, the owl ate a mouse or a rat or something, and it throws up or spits back out the bones and the fur, which it doesn't digest. However, if you do the same, if you give that mouse to a cat, it's going to eat the whole thing. Or a dog, it's going to crunch everything up and swallow it whole. It can do that easily. The dog and the cat both use that resource better because they're eating the whole entire thing. And they're digesting the whole entire thing, whereas the owl ends up having to spit stuff out. Now, the owl has other adaptations that make it better suited to its environment, but just something like that, and just in you talk about the fitness of digesting a mouse, then the owl wouldn't be as fit as, say, a cat would be. So that's what we talk about when we talk about fitness. So when you talk about an adaptation, it increases an organism's fitness, it increases the organism's chances for survival, and it increases an organism's reproductive success. That's what adaptations are good for. They're always going to help those animals do better in their environment. They're going to increase that ability. So there are two major types of adaptations. We can have anatomical, physiological, or we can have behavioral. So we have one, physiological. And I'm going to put in parentheses, or I'm not even going to write that, but we're also talking about the body structure. Physiology usually talks about function. We also are talking about the structure of it too. So the first type of physiological adaptation would be metabolic. And whenever you talk about a metabolic adaptation, usually you're referring to how the body uses energy. Capital E in science is always going to be energy, or it's talking about how it gets energy. How it uses energy, or how it gets energy. So the first thing over here, when we talk about adaptations, might be something like warm-blooded or cold-blooded. You guys have all heard of those, warm-blooded or cold-blooded. Does it maintain a steady body temperature, or does the body temperature fluctuate with the environment around it? The second thing here would be an example of how it gets energy: heterotroph, autotroph, chemotroph. And I'm going to put a dash right there, so chemotroph. The third one here is really different from the other two. This would be something that could be formed like antibiotic resistance. We're not talking about humans being resistant to antibiotics. We're talking about the bacteria that we're trying to kill. You guys have all heard of this, so where a bacteria becomes resistant to the antibiotics, and we struggle with trying to find ways to kill those bacteria. And then a fourth kind would be something like an ability to make adrenaline. Adrenaline is that hormone that's your fight or flight chemical, where it gets your body ready to either stand and fight or run, so it increases the heart rate, the breathing rate, and all that good stuff. So these are examples of physiological adaptations. You can also have, besides the metabolic adaptation, you can also have anatomical. So again, these are both types of physiological adaptations. I'm just going to abbreviate that here. And this is when we talk about this, we're talking about body structure. How is the body built? So in this case, think specifically like just the body shape. Think of a fish. So it could be the shape of the body, really made for swimming quickly in water, if it's a more of a surface type organism, or if it really dwells on the bottom, it's more flattened to deal with that. So the body shape can be an example. Armament, and a lot of people don't know what that word means. Armament means like weapons. Weapons. And I don't mean that, a hawk's going to go out and buy a gun. What I mean is that it's born with its own weapons. Think of those talons that it has, the claws. Think of the beak that it has. Those are natural weapons that it has. So this is armament. That's another anatomical adaptation. And then another example of one would be body covering, like whether or not it has fur or feathers or scales. Those are types of adaptations down here. Now, the other type, besides having physiological adaptations, and anytime you need to pause this, you guys need to do that, you can also have behavioral adaptations. So the behavioral adaptations, and I'm not even going to give a little group over here, the behavioral adaptations, examples of this would be mating and courtship. Think of birds. If you have never, I'm kind of losing this in here. If you've never got online on YouTube and looked at Discovery Channel videos or something along those lines of birds mating, they're crazy. They're crazy. So mating and courtship rituals, especially with the birds. Think of a peacock. If you guys have ever seen peacocks in real life, they fan that tail out. And that's not all it does, though. Once it's looking for a female, it fans the tail out, and then it starts shaking them. It sounds like it's just a rattler. There's a lot of rattlers around there. Interesting little organism there. Another behavioral adaptation would be migrating. Things that migrate from one area to another, whether you're talking about birds or sharks or monarch butterflies, they migrate. That's a behavioral adaptation. And then another thing would be something like feeding adaptations, and I don't mean different mouth parts or different ways of eating, feeding methods. There we go. It could be as simple as when you talk to people who raise horses and cattle, the horses tend to bite the grass down way close to the ground compared to the cattle that don't do that. So different ways for feeding, different adaptations for feeding. Maybe it's just a matter of some of them, there are some gazelles in Africa that can stand on their hind legs to reach the leaves on the trees that are way up high. So it just depends on what you're doing here. And then the last thing I want to write on here are 4 words that you need to know. And the first word is mimicry. And mimicry means one thing looks like another, or something else, something weird. The second word is camouflage, which I don't think you guys need me to explain what that is. I'm pretty confident that you know what that is. The third word is seed dispersal. How does it spread its seeds around? Think of the different ways, like think of how dandelions spread their seeds. Compare that to stickers. Stickers are seeds. And compare that to apples. How do apples get their seeds spread around? All different ways here. And then the last thing I want you to think about, and these are in terms of things that are adaptations, coloring. Just the coloring. Sometimes the colors are outrageously bright that don't blend in at all. Sometimes the coloring is blending into the background. Sometimes the coloring is a warning signal, like if it's black and yellow, it's going to be a warning danger, something along those lines. So again, what we're talking about here are variations and adaptations of organisms in different ecosystems. What types of variations do you have? Can you pick out which would be best for a particular ecosystem? Okay, so this would be the end of this B12B.